the faith of Elijah and Elisha stands out. Elijah rebuked kings, caused a drought, raised the dead, called down fire and rain, split the Jordan River, 16 miracles in all. Just when you thought you'd seen every miracle, God swept him up and he never tasted death. The mantle was then passed, the portion was then doubled, and Elijah's 16 became Elisha's 32. And these were just ordinary men like us.
What's up? Y'all are just like the 9 o'clock. Y'all wanted to stay in bed too because it's too cold. Oh, man. Am I the only one? Like when it's cold, you know it's cold, and you just like don't want to get out from under the covers? All right, I'm a lazy slug. I feel you. Y'all are real nice. All right. Look, so we're starting like a new series, and the whole thing we're going to do for the next 6-8 weeks is we're going to go through the life of Elijah and Elisha. So I'll give you a little bit of background on them, and then I'm going to go back, and then we're going to come forward. You'll get it. So the deal with Elijah and Elisha, they're prophets. So in the Old Testament, so before Jesus comes and Jesus reconciles us to God. So when Jesus does that, Jesus is the sacrifice for our sins, and this causes this allows for the Holy Spirit to enter into the world and into our lives because Jesus has made this sacrifice for us to atone for the things that we've done wrong, to pay the price for the things that we've done wrong, the things how we've sinned against God, right? Because sin separates us from God, Jesus closes that gap. And now the Holy Spirit can live in us and work through us, and that's what we believe. Now, before Jesus, there's a problem. Humanity is separated from God, right? And separated from God, like literally, God uses certain people to speak to his people prior to Jesus. And so you have these people, and they're called prophets, and they speak for God to the people. And there's a reason for this, that they need this. The reason is the nation of Israel goes through these cycles where they do good, then they do bad, then they do good, then they do bad. You've heard, you've seen it on social media. Probably one of your conservative friends posted a meme of it. Hard times make hard men. Hard men make soft times make soft men. And then the cycle repeats because soft men make hard times, right? You've probably seen this on social media, and you might think, well, that just, because of who posted it, you might think like, oh, we're going to get political today. No, this is a fact of history. That is the cycle through history, right? That's what happens. You have times of prosperity, and these times of prosperity lead to times of great turmoil because in prosperity, we don't know how to deal with hard things. And it gets messed. Listen, y'all, I'm not trying to call you soft, but like you probably rode here with a butt warmer on. You know what I mean? Like when you walk outside on the asphalt, your feet hurt. Like by definition, we're soft, you know, and it just is what it is. It's the time we grow up in. But this is what happens in Israel, and you have this cycle, and so they need these prophets because honestly, these prophets in a lot of cases are the hard men that say the hard things that start to turn things around. And so I'm going to go back a little bit to a guy named King David so that you can kind of understand a little more. So King David is, if you haven't been in church, you may not know who he is, but the whole idea of King David is he's the greatest king in the history of the nation of Israel. He is the one who took them to their highest heights. And so basically, David was a shepherd. He wasn't even supposed to be a king, but God chose him. And so he becomes king, and he's this great ruler. He rules well. He makes some mistakes, but he does pretty well. Hello, I talk for a living. He does pretty well. And then he grows the kingdom, right? And then David is the proverbial tough man who does that, and he's the warrior king, and you know, like the archetype of that just warrior king that you see in the movies, King Arthur or whatever. That's David, right? And so David brings about a time of peace. And the one thing in David's life that he never got to do was build a temple. He wanted to build a temple for God because for generations, the Israelites have been worshiping in the tabernacle, and this was essentially a tent. So he wanted to build a house for them to worship in, and God told him, no, there's too much blood on your hands. Your son's going to do it. So, okay. So Solomon comes along. I wouldn't call Solomon, he liked girls. He like 800 of them. Like he had like 800 wives and concubines. He was, what's the lead singer from Kiss? Gene Simmons. He was the Gene Simmons of the ancient days. That was inappropriate. Okay. That was his deal. And he had wisdom from God. He obviously didn't use it. Y'all are married. You want 800 of your spouse? He had the wisdom. I love my spouse, but I don't want 800 of me. I don't want 800 to anybody. That's too many people to take care of. That's what he had that. And then he did get to build the temple, but then you can imagine the family drama that's going on with Solomon. Like, who's going to be the next king? There's a guy, how many kids does he have? How's this going to work? And Solomon doesn't take care of anything right. He kind of does it, but it's a little messed up. And then, and you can't possibly have a functional life that way. And not to mention, with all of these wives come other religions. And then all of a sudden, not only does Solomon have a personal problem, because who's going to be the next king? What wife is the favorite? What son is the favorite? What daughter is the favorite? All this drama, it's a soap opera times 800 or something. I don't know. It's nuts. Not only that, now you got to deal with society being introduced to all of these new religions and all of this craziness. And like when I say new religions, like y'all are like, okay, like, coexist, the bumper sticker, with all the symbols. Like, sure, except it's not like that. It's not like that. Like you're talking about the rituals and the things that these religions entail and all this stuff. It's bonkers. Like, these are ancient times, and it messes up society, and it makes lives like what Solomon's living seem admirable and normal, and it's a problem. So then he dies. We've introduced new religions. We've messed a whole bunch of stuff up. Who's going to be king? You end up fighting over who's going to be king. You end up with essentially two separate kingdoms. That's how they fix it. You end up with Israel and Judah. So the rest of the Old Testament, you'll kind of have to figure out, like, are we talking about the kingdom of Israel or are we talking about the kingdom of Judah? Because they're two different things. And they have two different arcs and two different timelines and all that. So it kind of splits. And so then we kind of, Elijah and Elisha, you skip a couple generations. And in the nation of Israel, this king comes along. And his name is Ahab. And he is a soft man with a mean, angry wife. Her name is Jezebel. Y'all never met anybody named Jezebel, right? Like, there's Marys, there's Ruths, there's Esther's, right? There's Rebecca's, Lydia's. You haven't met anybody named Jezebel. It's because that lady's crazy. If you have met somebody named Jezebel, we'll pray for you after service. But she was nuts. And so Ahab is this guy, and he marries this woman. She was sent by another, it's like one of those royal marriages. A king's daughter ends up marrying, and somehow they're all cousins. You know how, like, it's messed up. So she's evil. And she worships these pagan gods and the gods of Baal, or the god of Baal. This god in particular shows up in the Old Testament a lot, because the deal is, this God is the God of the harvest or the rain or whatever. And so the whole idea with Baal is the worshiping, the fertility, it's a fertility ritual. They have fertility rituals. They have orgies, right? They have these things to worship Baal. So it's a problem. You're introducing all kinds of issues there. It's a mess. And so this is where Elijah comes onto the scene. 1 Kings chapter 17. Now Elijah, the Tishbite from Tishbe and Gilead, said to Ahab, "As the Lord, the God of Israel lives, whom I serve, there will be neither dew nor rain in the next few years, except at my word." Let's just stop there for a second. So Ahab is a king, you'll remember. Elijah is a prophet. Imagine being Elijah. Hi, King. Hi, Mrs. Jezebel lady. God told me to tell you something. So it's not. It's just awkward. It's not going to rain unless I say so. You imagine how dumb he must have felt? Yo, if somebody came up to you and was like, "Hey, Robert, you should just know, the water's not going to work in your house. God told me the water's not going to work in your house unless I tell it to work." Bro. Right? We always read these things and we assume that they don't have human emotions. We see them. Anybody watch the 300? That comic book, the lighting and all of that. And we see Elijah walking in there and being like, "It's not going to rain." And puffing his chest out. Dude, he must have been terrified. He's a nobody. They had to explain where he was from. They didn't explain where Ahab was from. He's a nobody, and he walks in there, and he's like, That must have been terrifying. It must have been absolutely terrifying. Here's the thing. We're supposed to, we talk about this all the time. We want to live in our God-given purpose. We want to live in our calling. We want to be where God wants us to be, right? And we tend to blow that up as this beautiful thing that's going to be this beautiful picture. It's going to be this thing that everything works right. You know what I mean? Like we make it in our minds a destination. If I'm living in my calling and if I can live there, everything will be perfect and great and awesome. But none of us would argue that Elijah's not living in his calling, but even still, weird things happen that make him feel awful. And sometimes, even when we're doing what God calls us to do, we're going to feel like an idiot. Elijah knew that he had to say what he was going to say. And he must have believed that God was going to do it because he said it. But there is no way. Maybe he didn't feel this way. Maybe I'm projecting. But there's just going to be times, even when we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, where we're going to feel dumb. We're going to feel dumb because of the the way that we think people perceive us. We're going to feel dumb because of the way we perceive other people. You realize none of this is fact, right? We will feel dumb because we perceive that other people perceive us as dumb. But also we'll feel dumb because we perceive ourselves as dumb. It doesn't say what the king responded. They could have laughed him out of the room. They could have done anything. But you read that, and if you read it realistically, you go, yeah, that seems a little silly. It doesn't matter. It just matters that we're doing what God called us to do. It's so easy in today's time to feel, I find it easy in today's time to feel dumb for believing in God at all. I'm not supposed to say that. But I find that easy because I go in and you grow up on this blind faith and you walk into a situation and you're like, yeah, God created the universe. And then somebody's like, evolution? And then they rattle off 35 studies that they read. Not that they understood them, but they read them. And why you're wrong. And you're like, but but God can do it. And he can, and you can stand on that. But in that moment, feel a little silly, right? Maybe I'm the only one, but you get what I'm saying? Feel a little like Jurassic Park makes you feel uncomfortable? Seriously. You can feel that way. But why? There's access to information everywhere. There's so much. There's so much. Figure out what's true. Figure it out. What isn't? Everybody can refute everything you say. Like go look up COVID studies. You can find 4 different sciences right now. And there's somebody saying follow the science, and you just have to figure out which of the 4 sciences they mean. Why? Because there's so many studies, there's so much stuff. You can refute everything with a study. You can refute everything with something you found in a Google search. It doesn't matter what it is, you can refute it. So it's really easy in today's day and age to feel dumb. And let me just say something. That's my greatest fear. That's probably why I read that part of the story and didn't see Elijah as this big, strong man, telling the king what's up. Because I can just imagine if I had to do that, how stupid I'd feel. Doesn't matter, though. We got to do what God called us to do, right? Sometimes when you're walking in God's will, you're walking in your purpose. Sometimes you're going to feel like an idiot. Doesn't make God any less, and it doesn't make your faith any smaller. It just is what it is. Let me keep moving. It gets better, then it gets worse, but then it gets better again, All right, so Elijah 17, verse 2. Then the word of the Lord came to Elijah, leave here, turn eastward, and hide in the Kerith ravine east of the Jordan. You will drink from the brook, and I have directed the ravens to supply you with food there. So he did what the Lord told him. He went to the Kerith ravine east of the Jordan and stayed there. The ravens brought him bread and meat in the morning, and bread and meat in the evening, and he drank from the brook. Sometime later, the brook dried up because there had been no rain. And then the word of the Lord came to him, go at once to Zarephath in the region of Sidon and stay there. I've directed a widow there to supply you with food. So he went to Zarephath, and when he came to the town gate, a widow was there gathering sticks. He called her and said, would you bring me a little water in a jar so I may have a drink? As she was going to get it, he called and said, bring me, please, a piece of bread. As surely as the Lord your God lives, she replied, I don't have any bread. Only a handful of flour in a jar and a little olive oil in a jug. I'm gathering a few sticks to take home and make a meal for myself and my son that we may eat it and die. Elijah said to her, don't be afraid, go home and do as you have said, but first make a small loaf of bread for me. That must have felt absurd in the moment. I just told you I'm going to go eat and die. First make a small loaf of bread for me from what you have and bring it to me, and then make something for yourself and your son. For this is what the Lord says, the jar of flour will not be used up and the jug of oil will not run dry until the Lord sends rain on the land. So she went away and did as Elijah told her. So there was food every day for Elijah and the woman and her family, for the jar of flour was not used up. The jug did not run dry, in keeping with the word of the Lord spoken by Elijah. That's driving me nuts. So, in this moment, you're Elijah, and it's super, you got to unpack the turn of events here. Elijah goes from talking to the king and be like, it's not going to rain till I say so, which, by the way, that's a lot of pressure, controlling the rain. And so it's not going to rain until I say so, and then God says, all right, now go hide. What? You don't have a better plan than go hide? I could have come up with go hide by myself. I just made the king mad. Okay? So he goes and hides, and then the birds, and then he go to this town, there's no water because you didn't say it was going to rain. Can you imagine that too, the temptation? God said that if it will rain if you say so, but God doesn't want it to rain for a certain reason, but then you're starting to run out of water. Well, how are you going to unpack that? What are you going to do there? I could make it rain, maybe, if God lets me. I should try. You wonder if he tried? What if he tried and God was like, nope, not time yet. But there's no water. Anyway, so there's all that going on. And God, go to the town. So he goes to this town, and God, he knows that God left a lady there for him. And the first one he sees, he talks to, and she seems pretty like accepting and like, hey, maybe this is the right lady. And she's like, yeah, I'm going to go die now. God, what is going on? Can I get a reliable helper? Like, this is a mess. And then he goes, look, this is what God's going to do. And he saves this lady's life. See, you may read that and go, why would she want to just go eat the food and die? Well, if she doesn't have a husband, if she's a widow, and she's running out of food, and there's famine, she has no standing in society. She has no way to go get more. And so what she has, she's got to work with, and she's running out of what she has. So her next logical conclusion is, we're going to have a nice meal, and then it's just going to be over. So Elijah comes along and saves her life. Elijah must have been like, man, this is a relief. I've been hiding. I've been eating meat that probably got pooped on by ravens. I've been drinking out of a creek. It's nice. I'm going to sit down and not have mud in my water and feathers on my bread. It's going to be good. And then on top of that, he gets to save this lady's life. He's got to be feeling pretty good about life in this moment. He's still hiding from the king. He's still an outlaw. He's still got a confrontation looming. But in this one little moment, he's a hero. Sometimes when you're doing what God's called you to do, sometimes when you're living in your God-given purpose, sometimes you get to feel like a hero. You don't get to actually be the hero. God's always the hero. But sometimes you get to feel like a hero. Those are the good days. Those are the days that you come home and you had the wins. Those days are awesome. And those days don't last. We build it up. Like if we're actually doing what God wants us to do, we'll be able to live in those days forever. It's not how it works. Let's keep moving. Verse 17. Sometime later, the son of the woman who owned the house became ill. He grew worse and worse and finally stopped breathing. She said to Elijah, "What do you have against me, man of God? Did you come to remind me of of my sin and kill my son?" So I'm going to go ahead and spoil the end of the story. Elijah ends up healing, raising. The boy lives. Elijah fixes it. But this one right here is one that I think we can all kind of understand. Elijah has been doing what God said to do. He's been doing what God said to do. He's been a faithful servant. He's had the good with the bad. It's been all good, all of that. And then this lady comes up to him and she says, "What do you have against me? Are you trying to, just because I've been a bad person, are you trying to kill my kid?" And what she's saying to him is, God uses you. It must be you that caused this to happen. How many times have you had that conversation with God? God, I'm doing everything I'm supposed to be doing. I'm following you. I'm on the track. I'm in your will. I'm trying to do what you've called me to do. I'm trying to live out my purpose. I'm trying to do all of these things. And why? I know you can fix it. Why won't you fix it? I know you can heal them. Why didn't you heal them? I know that this can happen. Why didn't you do it? And if you've been walking in faith for very long and you've had these moments, you also know that there's times when you do things that you have to do, when you say things that you have to say, and you do them out of love, and it is what it is, but people treat you the same way. Why would you do that? Why would you? There's times, just sometimes you're going to feel like the villain. Sometimes you're going to feel like a villain, like the bad person. just sometimes you have to say things to people out of love, and you know that God's telling you need to say it, and when you say it, they reject what you said, and they reject you. Sometimes you lose friendships. You're doing what God told you to do. You're doing your best. Maybe you're making all the right calls. Maybe you're not, but like you're walking down that road that God's called you to be on. And something goes wrong. And now it's all your fault. Right? What I'm trying to say here, I have a story, kind of. I don't know, life update, something like that. Kind of illustrate what I'm trying to say. So my wife and I have different views on food, right? She views food as fuel. I view food as fun. You see what I'm saying? Like, literally, she's vegan, if you didn't know she's vegan. So, like, for those of you who are unfamiliar with hippie people, so you have cultural vegans, you have dietary vegans, right? She's not a cultural vegan. Like, she doesn't hate me for wearing a leather belt, right? And our clothes aren't made out of hemp. You know what I mean? Sorry, stereotyping. That's not cool. But you've been to that coffee shop, so it's fine. And so she's not that. It's dietary, right? And it's a thing. Like, she's just like, look, like, food is fuel. What you put in is like, you're gonna. You are what you eat, you know. And she just does, like, to the point that, like, she said the word. I'm sorry, she's here. She's gonna be mad at me. But she said the words to me before I sautéed it in water. And my response was, that's called steaming. And she's like, yeah, but it makes me feel better to say sautéed. Like, she cuts oil out sometimes. Like, that's just, you know, and like, that's fine. And it works for her. Because she's in the same genes she's had for the last 4 years and we've had 2 kids. It works for her, right? So it's cool. I wish that I was the 12-year-old who could still shove zebra cakes down my face all day and feel awesome and look good. That's what I'm going for. It's not working. So I don't eat zebra cakes anymore, but not because I don't like them. They are not beneath me. It's because if I eat one, I feel like I'm going to die. So I don't eat them anymore. It's something about the styrofoam, you know? Like, those cakes got to be made out of foam. But anyway, for me, I enjoy food. I find food fun. I daydream about food. I have a problem. So there's times that I'll switch up my diet in an attempt to take things back. And so, like, we started doing this CrossFit stuff, we're working out, and, like, I got in pretty good, no, shape's the wrong word. I got pretty, because the shape stayed the same, but mostly. But I was in pretty good physical condition. Like, you know, I was like, I'm doing these pull-ups, the kipping pull-ups that they let you do in CrossFit. So, like, there's a little kip to it, but it's cheating, but not really. I don't know. Anyway, I was doing those at like 295. Like, people don't really, like, I was pretty strong, but, like, I needed to switch up my diet because your shoulders aren't made to swing around with 300 pounds attached to them. You know what I mean? Like, it's not good. I can't lift my shoulder right. So anyway, I tried to mess with my diet. I've done a bunch of different stuff. And when you start looking up diets, everybody tells you, do this. It's perfect. You've seen this. Do paleo. It's perfect. If you do it, it's how you were meant to eat in the first place. It's how ancient humans ate and all of that. Well, okay, that's awesome. If you like to do a research experiment before every meal to try to figure out if cavemen ate what you're about to eat. And by the way, there's a reason they invented all the other stuff, because the food that you can make with the real tools is better. You know, or keto. Like, keto, that's had like 5 lives. It was like South Beach, then it was Atkins, then it was something else, now it's keto. Like, it's the one that won't go away. Here's the problem. It's perfect, you'll lose so much weight, it's amazing. And it's like, yeah, but like if you tell me I can eat bacon every day, I'll do it. But here's the problem, I'll also slip and eat cake too. And then it's broken. Right? You read all these diets, do this, do that, do this, don't do that. And everybody has a perfect solution. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if their solution is perfect or not, because you're taking your imperfect self into it. Right? But in life, we look for these perfect, fix-all things. We look for these perfect things, and we want them to work. And we want them to be amazing, and it's going to make everything better. And in a lot of ways, we view God's will the same way. If I'm doing what God told me I'm supposed to be doing, everything will work right. And it's just not true. It's just not true. And it's not true for the same reason that your fix-all diet doesn't work. There are people involved. And we break things. And what do you need to do? You need to fix your perspective. You need to fix yourself. So when it comes to diet, I'm eating vegan right now. I've done it before. I do it every once in a while because it helps me fix my perspective on food. I eat food to enjoy it. And when I eat vegan, what happens is I start just eating because I have to. That sounds terrible. But it helps me because I'm not daydreaming about food all the time anymore. It helps me fix my perspective. We have to fix our perspectives on life, on how we view God's will and how we view these things. There's no fix-all approach. There's no perfect place. God's will isn't a destination. It's a journey. And we have to look at it and fix it. And at the end of the day, the problem that we have with it, what God's called us to do, with God's purpose in our lives, is that we want it to be perfect and people mess it up. You've heard people say, I'm done with the drama. Usually it's the most dramatic person that says that. I'm done with the drama. They're too dramatic. I need to live a drama-free life. Like, you've heard this before? Too much drama. Blah, 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 blah. Right? You've heard this before. And if you said it before, I'm sorry. I'm kind of making fun of you. You've heard people say that. And here's the problem. We do get to that place. Like, we do. And even if you don't say it that way, you can get there. It's not hard. I walked in the house the other day. And there's toys all over the ground. And I'm like, this is my version of I'm done with the drama. I'm like, if I see one more toy. Well, why? Because I'm going to get up to put the girls in bed, and I'm going to kick the toy, and it's going to wake them up, and now the drama started. Right? Or I'm going to step on it, I'm going to yell, I'm going to wake them up, and then the drama started. And if we try to avoid the drama, we're going to avoid people. Here's the problem with that. If I avoid people, I avoid my divine appointment. If I avoid people, I avoid my divine appointment. We all have our version of hiding because we're tired. We all have our version of trying to disappear. We all have that place. We all have that thing. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I'm saying it can be real bad if you let it get out of control. Because the more you avoid people, the more you hide, the more you avoid the things in your life that mess with you, the less you do, the less you're actually fulfilling God's purpose in your life. The thing with Elijah, he went through all of this stuff, and I'm sure, I kind of made jokes about it or whatever, but dude, just think about how crazy that is. This man had to go to the king and be like, it's not going to rain unless I say so. Whether or not he was terrified or emboldened, doesn't matter. He had to say that to the king. And then that caused him to have to go into hiding. And dude, we see all the TV shows, and it's like, oh, safe house, all this stuff. This man's safe house was a desert and a stream. And he's living this way, and then he's got to go beg for food from a widow who just wants to die. The man's life was not going well. And it was hard. But he didn't spend all of his time running from people. Now, we're going to talk about a story next week where he is going to do that. But in this moment, he's still walking down the path, and he's still doing his stuff, and he's still living in this town. He's still taking care of these people. I mean, this is covering a large amount of time. Like, he's in community. He's with his people. He's not hiding from his purpose. He's not hiding from the people around him. He's just hiding from the king. What do you do in your life to hide from people? See, the thing about it is, my purpose in life is for him and for them, not for me. And the less time you spend with him and them, and the more time you spend with you, the less you're living in God's purpose, the less access you have to your potential divine appointment. And I mean that both ways. Some of you have been called to do something, and you have a divine appointment. You have a divine position. You have something that God called you to do, and you need to go do that. And he's given you that job. You have been appointed to that job. And some of you need a divine appointment. You need to come across somebody who is going to love on you and pray for you and take care of you. You need a word from God, and you need to be in front of people who will give you that. And the more time you spend with me and not him and them, the less time you spend with access to that divine appointment. I'm not saying to cancel your gym time or your reading time or whatever it is. I'm just saying, don't let it be a crutch. I'm just saying, don't run from people. I'm just saying, don't get so depressed that you can't deal with the drama. I'm just saying, don't get so overwhelmed that you can't deal with the drama. Don't get so frustrated that you can't deal with the drama. Don't get so angry that you can't deal with the drama, because the drama is what comes with the people. The people matter, the drama doesn't. The people give us purpose, the drama doesn't. The drama is just a fact of life. You're going to feel like an idiot. You're going to feel angry. You're going to feel stupid. You're going to feel like a victim. You're going to feel like a villain. You're going to feel like a hero. You're going to feel all kinds of things. That doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. What matters is that I'm constantly trying to get closer to him, and I'm constantly trying to love and serve them. And the cool thing about God's economy is if I put myself in a community that's trying to serve and love him and serve and love them, I'm going to get served and loved. And I don't have to worry about me. Why? Well, I'm taking care of them, and they're taking care of me, and they're taking care of them. Everybody gets taken care of. Everybody gets loved. Everybody gets cared for. Now, that's an ideal world, and we mess it up all the time. The difference is when we're here, we work to find that balance. We work to live in that purpose, and we will work to take care of each other. In your life, if you're going to live out what you've been called to, what God's given you as your purpose. And hear me, when I say that, I don't mean something grandiose. I don't mean something huge. Some of you are called to raise wonderful children, right? Some of you, that's what you're going to do. And dude, do that, right? Do that. Raise kids that will change the world. Do that. Some of you are called to provide for your families, and that's it. Do that. Do it with joy. Do it knowing that you're fulfilling your purpose. Do it knowing that whatever job you're doing is bigger than the job. It's walking in God's will. Some of you are called to care for the homeless. Like, do that. It's going to be thankless. It's going to be hard, but do it. It's probably going to be just as thankless and hard as the person who's trying to raise good kids. You know? Like, do it. Whatever it is. Some of you, like, it doesn't matter how you perceive your purpose. It just matters that you're doing it. Forgot where I started the whole statement. We have to live in our God-given purpose, and that means we're going to have to be all about him and them and not worry about me. That means that some of you guys need to find a closer community. Some of you guys come here on Sunday You don't have any friends that believe the same things you do. That you don't have that body of believers that's in one accord, that's trying to live in God's will. You don't have that. You come here on Sunday, you eat lunch, you go home. Some of you guys need to find that here. You need to find friends here. You need to find community here. You need to have that so that it can uplift you, because if you're not getting filled up from God, and you're not getting filled up from your community, you're not going to be able to handle the drama that people bring. You're going to get it out of whack. It's going to be a problem. If you've been coming to church for years, you've been hearing sermons about purpose and all this other stuff, but you've never gotten involved in community, and you're like, I don't know why it doesn't work. I always end up upset. I always end up messed up. It's because you haven't gotten in community. It's because you haven't gotten in the support. It's because you don't have other people lifting you up. It's because you're not in one accord with those around you. You got to have the support so you can be who God made you to be. You got to find that. We'll have groups starting up in a couple weeks, and that'll allow you that'll give you an organized way to do that. If you're not the type of person who's just like, hey, you want to go get lunch? And then, if that's not you and you need something structured, we'll have groups starting up in a couple weeks, and you can look there. But just remember, as you go through your days and you get overwhelmed and the feelings of whatever are messing with you, whether it's good, whether it's bad, whether it's indifferent, it doesn't matter. When you're being attacked by your circumstances, remember, if you do everything you can to avoid the drama, you're avoiding the people. If you're avoiding the people, you're avoiding the move of God, because he moves in and through people. Can I pray with you? God, first of all, thank you for a book filled with people who go through things like we do. We may not have walked up to a king and said it's not going to rain, but we know what it's like to be entirely intimidated by a situation. Lord, thank you for giving us examples to be able to understand you better with. And Lord, I just pray that in this place, I pray that you'd give us an extraordinary amount of patience and joy when it comes to those around us. Lord, I pray that we wouldn't be beat up by our circumstances, but that we could keep our eyes on you. Lord, I pray that for anybody who's in here and they're like, I don't know what my purpose is, Lord, I pray that you'd help them find that. I pray you'd move them to open up your word, and I pray you'd speak through it. Lord, for everybody in here who's discouraged, I pray you'd lift them up. For everybody in here who's dealing with seasonal depression, I pray you'd lift them up, and I pray you'd make the sun stay out a little longer and it'll get a little warmer. And God, really what I pray is that we could be a people that are all about you and all about the people around us. Pray that we could be a people that lift each other up and that lift our community up. And I pray that we could keep our eyes on the things that matter, and that we could